Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. I am your host, Sharon Feckety, the Doctor Whisperer, and I am really excited to have this conversation with Dr. Kupferman, who happens to be from Long Island, like me. The accent doesn't come out too much, but it might in this interview, so that'll be fun for you if you're listening. If you're watching, you might see some of the Long Island moves that I do with my hands. So Dr. Kupferman is, well, he has a great company called MedVA, which I'm probably more excited to hear about than y'all listening or watching, because I am in recruiting hell, I will just call it, and trying to get great help today is very difficult. So I am excited to hear about this wonderful business that you have created. I think he has 19 degrees. He's like a doctor, a dentist, probably sings karaoke. I'm going to find out, but I'm really happy that you're here today. Welcome to the show, Doc.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And he's very soft-spoken, so he doesn't sound at all like he's from Long Island. Only I do.
Sometimes my accent comes out when I say, certain words, but
it's like coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Like coffee and a few other things, but it's rare. I keep it really, buried real low.
So funny. So do I. Well, my parents are from Ireland. So when I would come home and I would be like, oh my God, my parents would be like, oh no, we're not speaking like that in this house, young lady. So anyway, on to bigger and better things. I would really love to just dive right in and you tell me and the audience about this incredible company, MedVA.
Sure. So, I'm an oral and maxillofacial surgeon. I run a practice that has 5, soon to be 6 surgeons. And, we have our own surgery center. We do some of our surgery in our office, some of our surgery in the hospital. And before the pandemic, we had, 35 or 40 employees. And I was running the entire operation while working full-time as an oral and maxillofacial surgeon. And, just like you said, New York and, California has, just very difficult employer laws. And just the overwhelming nature of managing 35 people and their lives and their families' lives. And it just became so difficult, and it became so much more difficult than surgery. Surgery was easy. I didn't have to think for surgery. I didn't have
and you probably love it.
I love it. Yeah.
Right.
And so, this became by far the most difficult part of my day. And every day was a new problem, and the problems were not surgical. I could solve all the surgical problems in a second. But this just became such a huge problem, and I started to think out of the box and try to figure out some ways in which I can get better control of that. And so I started, just reading and looking at things online. And I'm a big avid reader of the White Coat Investor, and I started seeing some things in there about, virtual assistants. And so I started to make some investigations into some of the ability and availability of this feature. Again, before anybody knew what Zoom was or anything like that. And I hired my first few virtual assistants to just help. Just mm-hmm. help. I need help. I can't do all this. And it was even just just forwarding emails like, handle this and take care of this. And I had realized very, very quickly that all of the payers in this country utilize offshore staff to adjudicate every claim that gets sent out by a doctor's office. Mm-hmm. And they possessed an incredible advantage on us just in labor and workforce, again, pre-Great Resignation, pre-pandemic. And so I realized right away that there should be nobody in my office calling an insurance company ever again in the history of my practice of medicine.
Amen. Can I get an amen? Yes. Okay. I'm loving this so far. Go ahead.
So I realized that right away. And then, and so my first few were virtual assistants that were calling dental insurance companies and medical insurance companies, and just getting the information that they needed from them, waiting on hold for them,
Right.
at a fraction of what I was paying for somebody in the office. And so once I saw just that small advantage that I had, I said I got to go to the Philippines and figure this out. So it was like summertime. It was my 20-something anniversary, and so my wife wanted to go to Thailand, and I said, okay, well, we're going to stop in the Philippines on the way.
Perfect. I love it.
So we made a little trip to the Philippines. We stayed for a night or so in Manila. I met my virtual assistants personally. When I got to the hotel, I'm a pretty tall guy. I'm 6'4", 200 something pounds. And, my virtual assistants, they literally grabbed my arm and said, "You're real, Dr. Kupferman, like you're real," and like that connection, first of all, the respect that they have for doctors, for the understanding of how appreciative they are of the job, of the work, of the integration into medicine and modern medicine in the United States is just so appreciative on their part. I took them out to dinner, and I started looking around. I had some meetings just to see how I can start this and do this, and nobody knows about it. It was a secret essentially. And just from there, I just said, okay, well, I have to start doing this myself. I need to get this out to my friends and everybody that I know, because, we're losing all of our advantages as doctors, in this country. And certainly the private practice of medicine, which was always an inspiration to me, growing up on Long Island. Some of my closest friends, even to this day, parents were doctors and are still doctors and private practice. And that to me was one of the reasons why I went into medicine. And I mean, obviously,
Right.
my Jewish mom always said, you got to be a doctor, you got to be a doctor. But, a lot of my friends' parents were doctors as well. And that was very inspiring to me. And, I wanted to do that also. And, I wanted to have that lifestyle. I wanted to, be on call and be available to my community as a doctor. And so, in today's day in private practice, you start losing a lot of those things when you're, a slave to 30, 40, 50 employees. And so I was kind of losing that a little bit. And I just feel like some of this is kind of, gaining that, advantage back, that, that ability to, practice medicine without these workforce, restrictions. So, and then I just, started the, started the company and brought in a close friend who's a gastroenterologist who needed it as desperately as I did. And then the pandemic hit, and we got even busier because people needed doctors and labs needed people to really to get stuff done, to review COVID tests and do all those things. And then, we built up a team, and now, even in my practice, I have virtual assistants doing everything. We've expanded way beyond just calling insurance companies. We have accounting people. I have people who are doing marketing for me. Before the pandemic, I had this incredible marketing person. She would go from, go to office in her car, drive to the office, and,
like a physician liaison.
Exactly. How's everything going? Just making, I'm
a donut diva.
Exactly.
I'm kidding.
The donut diva. Well,
that's what we call them.
Exactly. Well, you take a virtual assistant and you add DoorDash and you have a donut diva.
Oh my God. Wait for it. What? I need to know more about that. So you can do the work of a physician liaison while using DoorDash or Uber Eats. Wow. I mean, that's great. I mean, that's the world we're living in.
Yeah.
Okay.
No parking, no traffic tickets, no car accidents, no 7-hour lunch breaks.
Not that anybody's doing that.
So, And then, I started using a scribe. I have a person who's doing my transcriptions, so I was able to almost flip the entire, workforce of the practice to virtual, other than people that need to actually be in the office. Obviously nurses and people who are taking blood pressures and things like that need to be there. My scrub techs need to be in the office, all that needs to be there. I still have a very robust staff. But all of the things that can be done virtually, are being done virtually. And the same is true for a lot of our clients. They've realized how incredible it is to take advantage of technology and utilizing Zoom and all these things. You can have people doing so much of what was done in the office in the past. And this has been accelerated, of course, by the Great Resignation. The typical medical office employee was a high school graduate who was getting paid $18 an hour and oftentimes running the entire practice.
Don't get me started, please.
And that person is now working for Google at $35 an hour or $40 an hour, and so that population hasn't moved into the workforce for the typical medical office, or they're getting paid $35, $40 an hour working in the medical office, which is great. And I value all of my employees that are doing that. It's great, but that initial job in the medical office is just very hard to find right now. The workforce is really restricted right now. There's just really not a lot of people available.
So
I'm going to let you talk a little.
Well, I wanted to hear you because I do tend to talk a lot, and this is a show about interviewing others to relay information, which I'm very grateful that you did all that. I want to know a few things. Number one, you just disappeared from the screen.
I did.
That's exciting. And now the dark hole of the interview. There he is. Camera. That's all good. Listen, we're living through a global pandemic, and I should be dressed as an Amish woman technically today. So in the world that we're living in today, you disappearing from the screen isn't a big deal. But tell me about the training of your virtual assistants, because I will give you some examples, and then I want this to be like this is real life situations that I'm talking about. So I have a physician that works in New York City. I have been working with her for 7 years. I have remotely hired and terminated staff members. I've onboarded them because, to me, it's so easy because it's just something I've been doing for over 20 years, right? And I always know when I have somebody great that could run the office, and I don't have to be there in person to do that. They have to pay me a lot more money, right? Because I'm a consultant, but I've never understood why we never advanced more in technology, because when I first opened my business 8 years ago, the first thing I did was hire a virtual assistant, right? I don't have that person anymore. Now I have full-time one, because I had 33 women that I survived, that I say often, because I can say that because I'm a woman, for 8 years. And there was 200 plus in New York that I survived. And it is just a glorified babysitting job. Nothing ever gets done because there's 2 hours waiting on hold for an insurance company, and somebody can't, if they're not getting paid enough to care that they shouldn't wait 2 hours on hold, right? It's just a cycle of sickness, I find. So now I find out about another company that does this virtually, and I have my doctor using them in New York, and then there's one here in Tampa, and it's very hard to introduce, though, I will say. Because unlike you, Doc, there are other docs that are not technologically advanced. Some might even have paper floating around, you know what I mean? And they have been running their office. I have one in mind right now who's really successful surgeon for many, many years, that when I walked into the office, it felt like I had gone back in time. And I would like to move the technology and to help them and see how not only can they save money, but they could save their mental health.
Yeah.
Because it is a really taxing job to not just run a business, but always worry about the person that's calling in sick or the person that's showing up late or whatever the issue may be of the day. I always tell my doctors to have a lot of stock in Kleenex because you're going to have to give that to somebody crying in front of you all day long.
All day long.
All day long. So to me, this is like, I feel less stress and pressure from my clients when I hear this, because I know you are so right. This is absolutely where doctors should be thinking about hiring now. They shouldn't be thinking anymore about this. But, the pandemic comes, and you started this before the pandemic, and it was hard enough to get them to start doing telemedicine.
Right.
So how do we do this? How do we introduce this? And so I want to know about training first. How do you train these staff members, these virtual assistants? And then I want to know, what does the onboarding look like? Because I will tell you a bad experience that I had with another company recently that I think my doctor would have died if I had not have been in control of it.
So, of course, we have a whole recruiting team in the Philippines. They also are in the midst of going through the Great Resignation. And so a lot of very talented people in the Philippines are looking for positions like this, where they have a much higher salary. They don't have to sit in traffic. And by the way, if you think the LIE is bad, try to sit in Manila traffic.
No, thanks.
So they're looking also to work remotely, to work from home, not have to go to a hospital and or worse, a skilled nursing facility. The Philippines obviously is a very healthcare centered culture.
Mm-hmm.
That's and their industry is this industry, remote work. It's a big part of the country's economy. So they're in the midst of the Great Resignation. People who are working, say, in hospitals now want to work from home, and they're happy to work evening shifts, because a lot of them are nurses and they've already done that for a long time, and a lot of them are young and they want to sleep when their kids are at school and be awake when their kids are sleeping, so that they can spend some quality time with their kids when when they're done with work. So we have a pretty robust recruitment, and then we have, it sounds a little gimmicky, but we have what we call MedVA University, where we put them through training, two full weeks of training, just on what we would like them to do before we even start talking to any let them even start talking to any potential doctors' offices. Again, they're all healthcare professionals, so we don't have to teach them like the high school students or high school graduates who are coming into the office. They had to learn all about medicine or surgery or whatever it is. They're already medical professionals, whether they're occupational therapists, physical therapists, RNs, LVNs, whatever it may be. They've already got that medical knowledge. Mm-hmm. So we put them through billing and training knowledge. We have a separate scribe course for those who want to be scribes, and so we do our training, and then when they're hired, they go through training for that office specifically. And a lot of doctors have this sort of problem, not realizing that when you hire Sally or whoever, they need to go through an onboarding process that's not taught in medical school.
Right.
So most doctors don't realize that you need to spend a month just to onboard.
Amen.
And they're not ready to be sitting at the front desk when they start day one. For doctors, it seems, oh yeah, of course, they just need to sit at the front desk. No, there's actually a lot of things they need to learn before they sit at the front desk. Mm-hmm. So we don't give doctors unrealistic expectations. They're very our virtual assistants are very technologically savvy. They're already in the healthcare profession. They're RNs, which in the US is impossible to find right now, and certainly They're not going to be your front desk person. So they have a lot of knowledge about medicine, but they're going to need to learn a little bit about your office before you have them answering your phones, all of your phones. One of the great things that I've been able to use in my practice is because everything's done remotely, we record all the training, the training. So the first training session that I did, which was, let's say, a couple of hours, was recorded, and that's been used for every training session thereafter. Whereas if you have somebody sitting in your front desk and one employee is teaching that person, then it becomes a game of telephone. Whereas if I taught, somebody on Zoom the first time, well, now everybody's going to be trained in the exact same way. So that's actually an advantage of virtual employees, is that everything can be recorded.
Yes.
So that's our training. We provide as much training as we possibly can, and we help out, with the integration and the onboarding.
And then tell us about the technology. Like, what does it take? I remember a company, and I can't remember the term right now, which I'm sorry that I can't, but you probably will. It was just, not voice over IP, but a way to connect to the Philippines.
So you're talking like a VPN?
Yes.
Okay. So, I tell any new doctor's office or healthcare system that we're working with that, if you have an IT person, get them on the line with us so we can talk to them and tell them what the best ways to do this are. There's a few ways. It depends on what your EMR is. Is it a cloud-based EMR? Is it a server-based EMR? Mm-hmm. But essentially, from a technology standpoint, each of our virtual assistants has, high-speed internet access, with backups so that they can connect into, the office. Mm-hmm. We have several vendors that provide voice over IP for those doctors that you're sort of talking about that may not necessarily already have voice over IP. So there are certain voice over IP systems that can integrate with analog phone systems, which we did initially ourselves, because we had an analog phone system several years ago. So from a technology standpoint, they're very skilled, the virtual assistants, because this is their industry, right? In LA, for example, everybody knows who all the actors are and knows all of these shows, and that, because that's the industry here. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the Philippines, the industry is remote employment, and so you can't really work there in that industry if you don't have a headset and a microphone and a computer. If you want to be in Hollywood here, you need to know who's who, what a manager is, what an assistant is. I mean, you have to know all about that if you want to be in that industry. If you don't need to know about it. So, in every city, I'm sure Tampa Bay has its as well. There's nothing really in Long Island, right?
I don't think so. You have to know what bagel store is good.
Exactly. Yes.
That's about it. Well, so great, because all I keep thinking about is, when can I schedule you to talk to my doctor? But I have a lot of personal, before I go into that, I want to talk about the Philippines. So I have said this, when I have a hard time connecting to the doctor and letting him know why the service works so well. And then, of course, they fall in love, and it's the best thing that ever happened to them. And they're like, Sharon, thank you so much. Oh my God, I can't believe it. It's wonderful. I'm saving so much money. And they love what they do, and they're so knowledgeable, and it's on and on and on. When I first started going on cruises, I was always amazed at the wonderful humans that were making those animals out of towels in the cabin. And they took my little Cooper, who's now graduating from college, but he was 4 years old then, and they were showing him how to make an elephant out of a towel. And then when we went to dinner, it was a big party, and they could not have done more and been nicer. I teach hospitality and healthcare, and I developed an online training course, because it's the one thing, well, there's many things in the medical industry, but this is the one thing where I feel like we're so lacking. And that is the hospitality and having nice people. And you said something very important before. They have a lot of respect for the doctors. I hired a manager to start a practice. I'm waiting 3 days for her to send me back her employment agreement. I've had to text her, email her, call her. I'm ready to drive to her house. And I can't be bothered, because I'd rather start with something great and go through maybe some of the difficulties with getting the technology set up, because then you're set up for life. You'd never go back once you had it. Am I right?
Correct.
So let me sell your company for you, because really and truly this is the answer for any doctor or any healthcare practitioner that's listening right now. This is the answer. It is torture to hire the humans. And that's true. And I say that all the time. So I'm the one that gets slack for that, but it is the truth. You find some great ones and you keep them for life and you treat them really well. But if you could outsource all of it's minutia. It's minutia. Yeah. It's sitting on the phone. It's answering the phone. It's waiting to leave a voicemail. It's making sure you follow up with the patients, and them being RNs. All private practices here are hiring MAs, and nothing against MAs, but usually they had a career working in retail and decided that's not working. I'm going to be an MA now. And the private practices hire them because they're the cheapest. And that's just the truth, everybody. So this is real talk here.
That's right.
And the LPNs are working in the assisted living facilities because the hospitals want the RNs. So you're getting the highest level of nurses to come in. And I assume you could do surgical authorizations, credentialing, HR, answering phones, onboarding. He's nodding, but he's saying yes.
Yeah. I mean, you can do everything. It's almost endless. Obviously you need to have, and what it allows you to do is it allows you to really double down on the people you need in your office. Mm-hmm. You can afford to pay them more. You can afford to take care of them, to retain them, to give them, the time that they need with their employer. So it really allows you to keep real talented people that are working in your office, that are touching patients, that are holding their hands, that are comforting them, when they're crying, and and when they're in the recovery area, or when the parents are, sending their kids into surgery or whatever it is. It really allows you to get, very talented people to do those jobs, rather than, kind of, scrounging around to try to find people.
$10 an hour, no contracts, no hidden fees or setup costs, hassle-free. No contract policy means you can cancel anytime. This is not like getting in bed with a pharmaceutical company, everybody. They're not going to take your firstborn if you decide not to use them anymore. The hours are fantastic. You're always going to get the same person. That's another thing that I think is a big selling point. I know that my doctor in New York City has the same person for the last 2 years and couldn't be happier. Accountability. And so tell me about the doctors real quick before we wrap up, because as you know, everybody has the attention span of a flea today. What has it been like for the doctors and the dentists that have decided to take on your services? What does their life look like now?
Each one is affected, differently. I was talking to a close friend of mine, someone who, I brought in early. He was doing medical reports, and it was, he came over to me one Saturday. He's like, "Stephen, what am I going to do? These reports are taking me hours of my time. Yeah. I can't do it anymore." And I said, "Oh, well, just get a virtual assistant. You'll train her to do it, and you'll never have to do it again. I mean, you'll review it, but you won't have to write the report again." And, this is now a couple of years ago. The other day, he was actually talking to my wife. He's like, "This is the most incredible thing. And, I don't know what I would do without my virtual assistant," is what he said. Like, I don't know what I can do without her now.
Right.
So it's everybody different. For me, I have, 15 or 16 working in my office. I couldn't deal with that without any of them, let alone, and one of the best things is that I can get people quickly. If I use the techniques that I did 2 years ago to hire people, which was, say, go on Indeed, put an ad out, go through emails, schedule. I know, are you vomiting? What
I'm supposed to do when we get off of this recording today. It's like, now I have
schedule them to come to your office
and them not show up.
90% no-show rate, right? And it's not even just a no-show. It's like they don't call, just nothing. It's radio silence.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work in LA. I can tell you that. I don't know about other cities, but it doesn't work in LA. So
not working for me.
Yeah. And for me, I just pick up, I send an email and I have 3 resumes within, 10 minutes, and I can set up an interview within an hour, and
help me.
So to me, that's, I just don't see any other way to do it.
Yeah. So I would like everybody to check out the show notes. We have all of the information about how to hire this company to save your life. If you are a doctor or even a practice manager, because I know that a lot of practice managers watch and listen to the show, I don't think I never thought I'd be able to convince my one doctor in New York that she could bring on a scribe. I think because that was that was the most difficult thing for her. And now it's like a dream come true. And really and truly, I think that I'm always thinking about how the doctors that I work with could enjoy the life that they deserve to live after helping so many people. It certainly shouldn't be spending your time being disappointed at all of the humans that show up or don't show up to do jobs that, somebody in the Philippines would be happy to do and grateful to do, and then really treat everybody well. So I'm really excited to have had this conversation. Is there anything that you'd like to leave the audience with before we go today?
No, I mean, I think you really, summed it up there. I mean, we didn't even have a chance to talk about doctor burnout, which is, of course, the most, and to me, this is just one of the solutions to it. I mean, just to have somebody there just to do things for you so that you don't, doctors have all these every day, especially surgeons, you're like thinking, okay, about every single step of everything that you need to do to make sure that all your patients, and that occupies a part of your brain. And then if you're trying to do all this administrative stuff and then your own personal stuff and all those things, I mean, it just, that's why there's 50% of doctors are burnt out.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm excited. We have to get off of this interview because I have to talk to him personally about how he's going to help my physician practices. So sayonara for now, everybody, but read the show notes and definitely pass it on, because the physician burnout thing is real and we want our doctors happy. Really, we want them to be focusing on how to save our lives versus who showed up late today and how am I going to cover this position. Really, like, let's help. This is what people don't understand about the healthcare industry and the medical industry is just that. It is a business. Whatever anybody wants to think or say, it is a business. This is the business of medicine. And if we have great people, like you said, I love when you said that the people that you have then in your office, you could help to earn more money, to take better care of. And then the physicians end up taking a whole weekend off and enjoying themselves. Like, imagine that life. So thank you so much, Doc. I appreciate you being here today.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. So don't forget, if you mention that you've seen the show or listened to it on the podcast, mention Thai Technology and you will get 3 months for free.